So even the biggest Black Company fan I know, hi Tubib if you're watching this, didn't think I would like this book. And Scott, who I think watches almost all my videos, hi Scott if you're watching this, I tend to agree with, and he didn't like this book. So I was extremely worried about this book, but I'm happy to say I enjoyed it quite a bit. Also, for those who were able to watch the entire Wheel of Time video, you can tell that I'm recording this directly after because Vin is still in the same place. Anyways, The Black Company by Glenn Cook, one of the precursor grimdark books in the entire genre, and a primary motivator and influence to Malazan Book of the Fallen. Let's talk about it. This is a first-person perspective book, and you are from Croker's point of view. And in general, I really enjoyed it. It's somewhat difficult to summarize because I think the biggest challenge of this book is that for a good while, it's not that you don't know what's happening. Like, you can read a scene and you could say, like, this is what happened in that scene. It's that it's not clear why that connects to the actual main story and why that's relevant. It's like 100 pages into the book, if I were to ask you, like, and it's only like a 300-something page book, if I were to ask you, like, hey, what's the main plot of this book, you'd probably be like, I'm not really sure. And I think that's probably a big reason why it is divisive, because personally, I still enjoyed it because I enjoyed each scene for what they were. Even if I didn't know how to connect, I was just enjoying the scene because I think Glenn Cook is just a pretty damn good writer. But I can see why it would be a problem. There are a few other things that I think cause some problems for people for their enjoyment of this book. The second is just the amorality of the characters. Like, they're called the Black Company. I feel like there could be a scene. Do you guys all know that joke where it's like it's two people who, like, you know, are in the German army, like, who were Nazis during World War II, and it's a skit, and they're like,
Hans, are we the baddie?
we've got skulls on our uniforms, and I feel like that's these people. It's like, are we the baddies? We're called the Black Company. Like, it's not exactly a nice name. And Croker, I think, avoids thinking about the morality of his own actions. And I think that's one reason why maybe he doesn't pop out as a character as some other protagonists do, because he internally just doesn't think, like, this is him writing it down. He's also his role in the Black Company. They have a name for it, but he's like the person who, like, writes down the stories and records the history of the Black Company. And he doesn't include his own thoughts that much. When he does include his own thoughts, I really love it. Like, this is kind of, it, like, in terms of tense, it's very similar to Dresden, where it's like first person past with hints of first person retrospective, and the bits of first person retrospective where it's almost like you get a little bit more commentary and foreshadowing are so, like, wonderfully delightful in both series and here as well. And one other aspect that I think makes this book maybe take a bit to get used to, this just comes down to the prose. The man got charged for every comma he used. I don't know how deliberate it is, but his average sentence length is the shortest I have seen of any author. Like, you will just get rapid fire, like, 3 or 4 word sentences. It seems like most paragraphs have, like, one normal length sentence and are just surrounded by a bunch of, like, really short rapid fire sentences that I feel like any other author would just use a comma or two. And it was kind of weird. Like, his writing style, for that reason, just kind of reads differently from anyone else that I've read. And I think it took some getting used to. But I actually got used to it relatively quickly, and I think he's actually, like, his prose is very good, despite that. Like, it's very distinctive, but I think he's excellent at, like, atmosphere and setting the scene. And I also feel like the actual characters we got a lot of, I feel like I got to know them really well, and they had good development, and their personalities stood out. I really enjoyed the way Glenn Cook wrote characters. It obviously doesn't seem to appeal to everyone, because it seems some people read these books and are just like, I don't care about these characters. But I really enjoyed it. And the characters I think I specifically enjoyed is there are kind of some pseudo-immortals. They're not fully immortals, but they're really old, and they're particularly powerful. And the way he wrote these, like, kind of pseudo-deities, both, like, their dialogue and their actions and their interactions, I thought was so well done. You can definitely see, I think, that influenced how Erikson then went and wrote his, like, gods and mortals interacting. Although I think a lot of this definitely influenced Erikson, especially the focus on, like, the military group. But I think the military stuff in this book was written extraordinarily well. They're definitely, like, Malazan Marines a lot of the time. I'm talking about Malazan and Black Company review. Let's put it this way. The Black Company Marines, or the Black Company soldiers, are not good people. Croker himself seems like a decently moral person, and there are a couple people in the Black Company who seem to be decently moral people, but as a whole, it is a group of bad people. Just straight up bastards in general. And so there are some parts in this book where, while Croker himself doesn't do bad things, he also just, like, kind of ignores the bad things that his fellow soldiers in the Black Company do. And I think it makes him interesting here. Also, one thing I didn't know, but I actually really like, and this isn't a spoiler, you learn this, like, on page 2 or something, is that Croker's the physician. Like, he's the doctor. So even though it's following a military group, you end up not having a ridiculous amount of action, because usually when a battle goes on, he's, you don't put your doctor on the front lines, because he's more valuable healing other wounded people. And one thing I really liked about this book, and this is something that a lot of people won't care about, is the military tactics and strategy. Now, I am not going to claim to be an expert in ancient warfare. However, I am enough of a nerd and interested enough in ancient warfare that I can tell when someone knows their stuff. And, like, Glenn Cook probably knows his stuff for writing warfare better than 100% of authors I have read. He would literally be the number one power ranking. And there's a battle at the end of this. Like, there's a final battle. And it's like it's a siege. And it's one of the best sieges I have ever encountered. Both from a character, intrigue, and story standpoint, and from the standpoint of, like, tactics and strategy, and being real, both realistic, compelling, and employing magic in a way that feels like the way it would be incorporated. I really enjoyed that aspect of this. And overall, I really enjoyed The Black Company. I would give it like an 8.1 out of 10. I've heard that it seems to be considered one of the weakest books in the series, and it's made me go from worried about the series. Like, there are some books you go into that I am not worried about whether I'll dislike them. Like, I would be extraordinarily surprised if I disliked them. Like, I don't know. I'm not going to dislike Jade Legacy. Like, there's a possibility I might not love Jade Legacy, but when I go into Jade Legacy, it will be like, how much do I like Jade Legacy? Black Company was one of the series where, like, I was worried that I would dislike it, partially because the people who like it seemed to be worried I would dislike it. So I'm really happy to say that I enjoyed it, really, for the most part. I think really the only big flaw it has is just that some of, like, the scenes, it's unclear how they correlate with the main plot, but that just didn't end up being that big of a deal for me. And I think, you have to be aware that this is grimdark fantasy. Like, character, like, the Black Company are not going to be good people, but they actually, some of them are sympathetic, and some of them I was rooting for. The other thing to talk about is, like, what the hell is this cover? Like, what? What were you thinking, people? Funnily enough, this character who was drawn creatively, let's say, is not a damsel in distress. This is in fact like this is the Sauron. So that was interesting. But it was a book that also asked questions, like although I don't know how many questions it asked. Like, it's not like there's a question of whether the Black Company are the baddies. They're the baddies. They are not the good guys. They do some good things sometimes, but they are not the good guys. And there are worse guys, but anyways, that sounds interesting to you. I'd recommend you read it. I really enjoyed it.